This is rooted in evidence. I don't think people necessarily understand how they're speaking to themselves.
Yeah.
Tell yourself, what, it's hard, but you can still handle it. This is tough. I've done tough stuff before. I can get through it. I try to tell people, the thinking is sort of like, building a muscle in the gym as well, the strength training. You've got to keep practicing it. This is a lifelong habit that you want to create. And sometimes if we're just focused on what it can do for our body in 6 weeks, and then again, if we fail or don't achieve those unrealistic standards, it can just set up this negative relationship with exercise and diet.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Like a Girl podcast. I hope you've all been well. Today we are going to be doing a bit of a deep dive into a bit of a new topic. But we're going to start off with some questions. First of all, do you talk negatively when you're exercising? Do you kind of have that negative mentality around exercising? Do you struggle to maintain consistency? You might not even know why you're struggling to maintain that consistency. Well, this episode is for you. Today, we're going to be looking at how different attitudes and languages affect girls' and women's approach to exercise. This has changed across generations, and we are joined today by Dr Natalie Grinvalds, who's a PT and researcher specialising in physical activity, health and behaviour change. And we are excited to talk today and get to the bottom of why it can be so hard to maintain consistency and why day-to-day messaging around us may actually play a larger part than we think. Welcome, Natalie.
Hello,
to the podcast.
hi. Nice to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. So we kind of explained at the beginning, but we always start off the podcast with a bit of how everyone's week was and our recommendations of the week. Ella, shall we start with you?
All right, I'll kick us off.
How was your week?
My week has been full on. I feel like I'm going a little bit crazy. I've got my literature review draft due.
That's brutal.
It is actually an interesting topic. I'm enjoying it, but it's just full on. And I've realised I've left a lot quite last minute, as always. But I thrive under the pressure, I feel. So I think I'm going to produce some quality stuff, and I'm happy with it so far. So it's going well, but it's been full on.
Fair play.
Are we doing recommendations? Shall I
Yeah,
do?
go ahead. What's your recommendation of the week?
Recommendation of the week. I fully rate this. I would rate it for anyone. I think nursing a pint at the pub and doing work is an incredible way to get work done. Like having just one pint, hot day, it's a beautiful weather at the moment, cracking on with some work. I fully recommend. So that is my recommendation of the week.
Love that.
Love it.
Love that.
Love that. Yeah,
Natalie,
makes the challenging task a little easier to go down.
Stomach. Yeah.
Definitely. How was your week?
Yeah, it was good. Also very full on, starting some new work on an evaluation of Sheffield's physical activity strategy. So really excited about
that's
that.
Really interesting.
And also got back from Scotland, which was an incredible experience, which kind of leads into my recommendation.
Yeah.
So if you've not been to Edinburgh, highly recommend walking up Arthur's Seat. But it does get quite steep at the top and windy, but the view is worth it.
Love
I did chicken out at the end and take the slightly less steep route.
It's got to be done.
It's
got to be done.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, my week was busy too. I think there's might be just be something in the air for April, to be honest.
Yeah.
Definitely.
New financial year, it's coming with a hit. That's such an adult thing to say, but it's true. And my recommendation for the week is taking a few deep breaths. I think there's been a lot going on recently.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think when I feel myself getting a bit overwhelmed, just a few solid deep breaths and it's like clarity comes back to me and I'm like, oh, I can do this. I can handle this. My other top tip, and I think I spoke to you, Ella, about this earlier in the week, is Gwen Stefani's song. How does it go again?
Don't ask me. Don't ask me.
I think that's a bit more my generation.
No, I love it. It's take a chance, else you might. What you waiting for?
Oh, what you waiting for? I love that one. Yeah, classic.
Such a good one. Yes.
I'm not gonna sing it with my
so
hay fever.
Good. It's so good. I love the line where she kind of goes like, you're capable, like all that sort of stuff. And I just thought, what a song for this month. It's intense.
Especially.
And he did.
Well, I feel like that ties into kind of what we're going to talk about today and the way you talk to yourself and how that matters for exercise and motivating yourself. So
it's perfect. Setting the scene.
Yes.
I feel like we can kind of go into the topic then with that little segue.
Yeah, but I love, can I just say about your deep breaths? you know, there's evidence to show like what you're doing is supported and helps you reduce
wow.
your stress. So at the end of kind of when I'm teaching a more high intensity interval style indoor cycling class, I get people to do that breathing in the cool down,
Wow.
which
Ooh.
some times in the research is called down regulation breathing, which actually lowers your sympathetic nervous system and that fight or flight response. So there's
Um,
something in that,
wow,
you know.
that is
It's really
interesting.
powerful. We can all do
Scientifically,
it.
yeah.
Ooh, there we
Yeah,
go.
must
Good reminder.
Yeah, I'm not just a
kickstart your
pretty face.
parasympathetic. Yeah, exactly. She knows.
Oh, that's great. So going in then to kind of the topic that we've come here for today, one of the things that we wanted to get a bit of a grip on before we kind of get into the kind of nitty-gritty science of it all was just kind of understanding how you found yourself in this world, kind of like, you know, what's your story? How did you kind of come to find your interest in, I guess, fitness and wellness, but then also the messaging side of it all?
Yeah, sure. You know, from a young age, I always enjoyed, you know, playing outside,
Yeah.
participating in movement. But I was born a couple of months early and kind of had some issues with my lungs and asthma. So from a young age, I had to take oral steroids. And one of the side effects of that causes you to put on a significant amount of weight. But it was necessary at the time to help get rid of the inflammation in my lungs and actually allowed me to be able to move. But during maybe around 5-6 years old, was quite bullied about my weight, and in school kind of picked like last for the sports teams, which, you know, maybe delayed me developing some of those sports related skills, and kind of impacted, you know, how I viewed myself as well. But luckily I was tapered off the steroids, later on found dance. And for me, when I was dancing, I wasn't thinking about, you know, my body. I just felt good moving. So danced for a while, got into tennis, playing tennis a bit at school, and then became quite serious about dance, and never really had the kind of perfect idealized body type that is often required, which is extremely unrealistic, and went to a ballet school in Chicago and just got to the point where I thought, I don't want to do this forever. So kind of really didn't do a lot of physical activity for a while, decided to go to uni, and then started in psychology because I was just interested in what motivates people and how people think, and then ended up doing public health and applied health sciences, but hadn't really kind of got back into maybe structured exercise routine or physical activity or played sports. I did just kind of occasionally go to the gym in my undergrad, but I was always interested in health and as exercise and how it can impact our mood and help people. So ended up doing an internship in cardiac rehab, and that was really kind of paramount to see how physical activity and exercise can help us, you know, actually change our health outcomes and our health trajectory. It's really, really illuminating. And so the first 2 phases of this kind of cardiac rehab that I did my internship with were at a hospital-based gym. So very acute care. People came right out of surgery, and they would go to their rehab, which was exercise. And then I would kind of coach them on, you know, progressing through that exercise, and then also on their dietary habits. So yeah, I did that internship, worked in several different jobs. I actually moved to Sheffield in 2012 to start my master's in public health at the University of Sheffield. But there were some difficult situations within my family, struggled with stress, and actually moved back. And at that time, thought I failed and thought it was the worst decision of my life. I ended up going back to work at a small health department in my dad's town, and then moving to a bigger city, Columbus, Ohio, where I worked at a medical center. And I thought, you know what, I really need to get my master's, finish my master's to be able to progress in my career. So I went back to my undergrad, university at Indiana, and that's when I started doing I did my master in public health and behaviour, social and community health, where I really became interested in how do we affect change in health behaviors, especially physical activity, all the way from the individual level to the macro level. And that's where a lot of those psychological theories come in to play. So in the final semester of our master's, it's a very applied degree, you also had to do an internship. And I just was determined to find a way to come back to Sheffield. I'm very stubborn, borderline determined. I don't know where to draw the line. So I contacted some people in Sheffield. I said, do you know of any organization that would allow me to do my internship 300 hours, which was unpaid? They thought I was crazy, but that's kind of how it worked at that time. So came to do an internship with an organization in Sheffield called Manor and Castle Development Trust. The other interesting thing I should point out about Sheffield is that it follows a very similar pattern to Glasgow, something called the Glasgow effect, where there's extreme health inequality, extreme life expectancy difference between very short postcodes that isn't eradicated with education, income. It's kind of systemically ingrained in society. And that's why, when we think about physical activity, health, and well-being, it's really important to get the messaging right and target the people that really need it. So that was exceptionally interesting to me. So, where a lot of, where Sport Sheffield, University of Sheffield's gym is, that kind of S10 area to the Manor area, there's like a 15-year life expectancy difference. And that shouldn't be okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then I really wanted to stay in Sheffield. I was supposed to stay 6 months. I was like, I'm not done. I ended up training with Sheffield Hallam's workplace wellness program, which is evidence-based, using behavior change and physiological testing to help change behavior. Then someone said you should consider doing a PhD. At that time, I was working at the University of Sheffield as a course administrator and started the PhD 2017. Yep, and then alongside that, trained in the different fitness qualifications and started teaching classes. And then I won't give you the rest of the story, but I'm still here.
That's
so
amazing.
It's worked out. Your career path is so non-linear, but brilliant at the same time.
I know, it is very
It's
non-linear.
really cool.
And, I think sometimes there's so much pressure on young people to pick what you want to do when you're 18. And, I'm nearly 37 and I always tell students, I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. But if you put yourself in a box, you miss so many things that you could do that you never imagined for yourself. So I think that's important. And it may not look like success on the outside, but I can connect the dots looking back. And having those diverse experiences has allowed me to be able to work in different areas. Yeah, it's been an interesting journey, and I try to, I know you probably speaking to me about kind of my research area, but one thing I am passionate about, and many people in Sheffield will know me, is as a fitness instructor and personal trainer, and I try to apply these things within the class to get the best out of people. And a lot of times people come to the classes and they're not maybe used to the style of communication or teaching, but then they get it and they see that it works for them. And there's a lot of research, this isn't my research, but on messages around all health communication. So historically, if you think about claims you've heard about health and health behaviors, it's around loss frame messages. So so things like, if you don't start exercising, you're going to get a heart attack when you're 60. If you don't stop smoking, you're going to get lung cancer. If you don't eat well, you're going to clog up your arteries. But gain-framed messages are the things you stand to gain. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yes,
so, for
that's
example,
it,
feeling better about ourselves from moving more, weight loss or kind of affecting our shape is a loss frame messages. Or, getting to spend time with friends, reducing stress by, going for that swim or that run. Same with nutrition. So, just feeling better energized to handle your day rather than, avoiding sugar because, of the health consequences.
Yeah.
No, it's so true. I feel like it's so framed throughout our lives. And I think across generations as well, we've all experienced slightly different messaging, but all with that same loss mentality. Like, if you do this, you will stop being this way. Or, I don't know, living your life in this way, you can change it all for the better. But it's also that loss mentality that's ingrained across every single generation. So I'd love to get into that with you today, because we would love you to take us through a bit of a timeline if possible, because I loved your webinar in terms of how you took us through the generations. So you grew up in the 90s, as you told us. So what was the messaging like back then? I sound like it's like 50 years ago.
Well, I mean,
it's not. Sorry, anyone born in the 90s. It's really not. What's the messaging like back then? Magazines, that era. Give us a little bit of a breakdown.
I mean, it was 1990 was 35 years ago.
I actually don't want to think about it.
Sometimes I feel, as young as all of the people that I teach in my fitness classes, then I realize, oh my goodness, I'm like double everyone's age. But the nice thing about strength training and physical activity, hanging around younger people, it makes you feel a bit younger as well.
Yes.
So, but I think history, you're a history graduate, you'll know it serves a purpose because it's important. Sometimes we don't reflect back and learn from our mistakes and repeat everything again. And sometimes I'm worried that that's just what's happening again, but just kind of in a different disguise. So when I was growing up, social media didn't exist. Facebook wasn't a thing. the internet was just kind of starting, but most of the messaging that I received from around your body, around what it should look like, around diet, around nutrition, around physical activity, movement, exercise was from magazines, print journalism. So I remember looking at those magazines, and oftentimes it would be a photograph of a woman that was very chiseled, and you would see a lot of messaging around exercise serving a purpose to kind of make yourself smaller, burning fat, slimming down, do this exercise, and you'll get flat abs. A lot of it also rests around kind of like hypersexualization of women, so toned, sexy arms. And then a big one was around maybe the early 2000s. I just remember the proliferation of this message, the thigh gap. Was the ideal body standard. And my bone structure is not like that. I've always had, pretty muscular thighs. It's just how I was born. And I just remember thinking, there's no way I could achieve that. Some people's hip widths just don't allow for that. And then at the same time, you've got these double standards as well. So things like exercise to be strong and powerful, but on the same magazine, it might be like, okay, slim down with this diet plan in 10 days.
Yes.
So I grew up seeing that, and obviously we don't internalize every message we read on the internet or online, but there is research to show that harmful messaging does have an impact on individuals. So yeah, I grew up with seeing a lot of that, and I think women have historically faced a lot of pressure to look a certain way. And there's guilt that comes from not being able to meet these standards, which impacts our relationship with exercise. Because if we only view it as a tool to manipulate our body, then we're not able to achieve those unrealistic standards. Then maybe we don't want to exercise at all. But we know the benefits are so much greater than just what it can do for your body.
Yes, and I feel like on the theme of that, achieving those standards or achieving goals that you set for yourself in line with what we see in the media and what we see on social media, I think it could have potentially gotten worse for our generation. Just because of short form content, which we'd love to chat to you about.
Yeah, I would love to know how you feel it got worse.
Yeah, in the sense of, obviously, like if you're on Gymfluencer, Talk or whatever, you have seen a lot of short form content, and it's that quick, snappy, highly edited content, which is so addictive. Like I love it. I do like TikTok, can't lie. But when you're scrolling through and you see this perpetuation of the same message over and over of goals you should be achieving, but then portrayed as so easy and so quick and so aesthetic. When you see it, it can be quite, oh, why can't I do that in that time in that perfect way? So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, so on one hand, just kind of going back to the research, there's a few researchers that did some studies on #Fitspiration images and the content, a content analysis of what this looks like from 2014 to 2021. So going a few years back, but again, and this will probably just sit with what you've already told me, it just kind of encourages appearance-related standards. And that weight management, emphasizing attractiveness as the sole motivation to participate in exercise. And at the same time, although, it can be negative, I think in one way it kind of democratizes or makes this information more readily and freely available, but a lot of, and this is backed up with research from just last year, that a lot of it is misleading and harmful. And sometimes when I don't have TikTok, but I open up the reels on Instagram and I see so much incorrect information. And these people look very confident when they're talking about it, and they're very believable. They have a lot of followers. So I think on the whole, it unfortunately can be more harmful. I do believe we need to, there is a benefit that I think it allows us to see a wider range of body types, a wider range of kind of different opportunities to be active. But on the whole, I think a lot of it is harmful. And there was kind of a movement a few years back. So kind of moving on from the thigh gap was like strong, not skinny. But then I get where this is coming from. And I think, yes, strength training, taking up space is kind of what that's about, owning our space in the gym, but also in society. But a lot of the images that accompanied that hashtag were very lean but muscular. And again, proliferating this kind of unrealistic body image standards. That coupled with a lot of accounts which are focused solely on body transformation before and after.
Yeah.
Then they're highly edited. And then we've got AI as well coming into it. So
it's a lot.
It's a lot to take on. But then also on the flip side, do you think there are any up and coming sources of more positive, body positive messages, for example? Like, I personally love, I don't know how you say her last name, but Ilona
Mayer, yes.
I love her.
Yeah. So I kind of did a little look at what was available now, and I think she said all body types can be Olympians, and she's very out there to say, look, it doesn't matter what you look like. You can take up space, and it's important to be active for reasons beyond what your appearance is. I found some other accounts. That there's one called like Girls Gone Strong, and she's very much about focusing not on what physical activity can do for your appearance, but thinking about that old lady body and what you want to be like in a long 20, 30 years. However, the messaging around physical activity, there's a very well referenced behavior science researcher called Michelle Seeger, and she said that if we want to get people to be active in the long term, we got to focus on the short term benefits with our framing. So things like, I want to reduce my stress, I want to feel good right now, rather than kind of like what things might happen in 20 years. But I still think it's important to think about, this is a lifelong habit that you want to create. And sometimes if we're just focused on what it can do for our body in 6 weeks, and then again, if we fail or don't achieve those unrealistic standards, it can just set up this negative relationship with exercise and diet that is just going to be maybe a yo-yo effect over the long term.
Yeah, I feel like it can feel like there's so much of the same sort of content, especially with algorithms like we talked about.
Yes.
Like, I think there's that perpetuation of the same message. Say you have a negative thought at one point, you're like, I'm going to go down this rabbit hole of this is slightly negative way of thinking, but I'll watch one thing, and then you watch it all the way through.
Yeah, you're watching another one.
And then it just keeps coming up, and then you have the same stuff over and over.
Absolutely.
I don't know if you've experienced that. But
yeah, definitely. And I think there's an element of consent in it, right?
Yes.
So like, I grew up in that 2014 to 2020s like era where like I was kind of on the tail end of the thigh gap, where rather than kind of making a thigh gap happen, we kind of worked out how to position our bodies for photos.
Okay.
So it looked like we had one without having one, which not great, but
not the one.
It was what we did at the time, alongside like the atrocious makeup. And I'm sorry, girls, but like I think we're all happy we've moved on from that point. But I think at that time, there was obviously a lot of nasty messaging about kind of how to get your body into that ideal shape and some of the routes you could take to do that. But there was an element of you consented to getting that information because you clicked on something, like you went for it.
Yeah.
Whereas I think now going on your For You page and something just coming up rather than you going hunting for it, it's very different, and I think it's quite risky.
Yeah, and I think, we're not going to stop kind of the spread of social media and AI, but it's really hard because if we want to impact change on a broad level, we have to take actions that affect the system, which I'm not sure how that's possible with this, but I think educating people as much as we can to be aware of what you are interacting with and unfollow accounts that make you feel bad about yourself. But again, really thinking about, do we want to develop a relationship with exercise that's positive for the long term, because there's so many benefits, and accessing a lot of that misinformation doesn't support that.
Yeah, and I think we're taught a lot, like in our generation at least, we're taught a lot to think when you see a piece of content, is that actually true?
Yes.
I think something we're not taught to think about a lot is, how did that content actually make me feel?
Yes.
That's such a good point.
And that, I think, changing our narrative to, it might be true if I do this harmful stuff. The outcomes be. But how would that make me feel? How did watching that video make me feel? Did it make me feel guilt? If that's the case, block. Move on, I don't need to see it. So I guess there's that element to it as well, of actually thinking about the feelings aside from just the factual. Yeah, and
again, choosing what you interact with, but also changing the way we speak to ourselves as well. I don't think people necessarily understand how they're speaking to themselves on a daily basis. I don't think a lot of people are aware of that. And then, can you change that? That is, what is in your control, I guess is what I'm saying. And there's so much research to support that speaking to yourself with self-compassion is actually effective. A lot of people think, well, if I'm kind to myself, I'm just going to not want to do anything. But Kristen Neff, a researcher in self-compassion, has found that actually it motivates you to want to do more.
Yeah.
And people sometimes are like, well, what does that actually mean, self-compassion? Well, it means kind of talking to yourself the way you would a friend, and hopefully you would talk to your friend in a nice way. So, in my classes, I coach people through this, and I get them to think about things like, okay, tell yourself, what it's hard, but you can still handle it. It's not about just deciding, okay, I'm going to leave the class because this is too hard, or whatever you're doing with your training, or, maybe some academic goals. It's about saying, look, this is tough. I've done tough stuff before. I can get through it.
Yeah.
Rather than, I'm sorry, but some of my generation would talk to ourselves like, you lazy piece of,
Yeah.
you just need to work harder, and then, you need to burn those calories. And I never speak that way in my classes. And I think some people aren't used to that kind of more self-compassionate approach, but it's been applied in sport psychology with athletes, and it's shown that it's more effective motivator than, beating yourself up or tearing yourself down. Same with guilt. So I think my generation, a lot of the messaging was framed around guilt. We kind of internalize that, especially as women, I think.
Yeah.
I hope that for your generation it will be better. But again, it's not motivating.
Yeah.
And especially with health behaviors, there's a lot of research around shame. So again, going from those lost frame messages, a lot of it was like, you just need to try harder. It's your fault you became, you lived with obesity. You did these behaviors to get yourself there. When in reality, we know a lot of our behavior is influenced from our environment as well. But beating people up and digging themselves in a hole, beating themselves up and making them feel worse is not going to help. In fact, it will have the opposite reaction. And we can think about this when we speak to ourselves as well.
Yeah.
It takes practice.
It's really interesting, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think when we listen to your research, there's an element of this working no matter what the exercise was, right? So
Yes.
this isn't just about how much you like the exercise.
Yes.
This can supersede that.
Yes, exactly. So I think one study, a very interesting study that I found was talking about the power of our mindset. And they portrayed exercise in 2 brochures. So maybe you could also have an Instagram post for this, for example. And one of them was about talking about all of the benefits that you would get if you started exercising and the guidelines. The other brochure was about thinking about exercise as benefiting you from or thinking about the power of your mindset when it comes to exercise. So thinking of it as time for you, indulgent time for self-care, which I don't think many people think about going to the gym and doing your strength training as like relaxing or time for you or self-care. But they found that people were more likely to sign up for fitness classes and participate in them when they thought about it in that way.
Yeah.
It wasn't about changing the exercise to make it more fun. So that's something I do, which I'll talk about in a second. But it was about thinking about the way you think about it. And so I always kind of joke to people, I'm saying a lot of this is in your head. Obviously, physically, you need to be rested and nutrition and focus on your whole, the holistic approach to your training. But when you're rested, when you're well trained, when you are, or when you're well rested, when you're well fed, when you're ready to train, there is a lot that you can impact just by your thinking, which I think is so powerful.
It's so interesting, and it feels like something you can almost apply to fitness, but then also, I guess, apply in so many other areas of your life. And I think a lot of people talk about, as they do more fitness and they grow that confidence in fitness, they see that coming out in other areas of their life too. So I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Maybe talking as well about how it can improve other areas of your life. For me, when I moved to Sheffield, I actually hadn't done an indoor cycling class.
Oh, wow.
Back in 2015. I actually ran a lot in the city that I lived in, which was very flat, and I thought, there's no way I can run on these hills in Sheffield. So I started indoor cycling, which actually was a segue for me getting more into strength training alongside doing my strength and conditioning qualification, doing my PhD, and knowing more about the evidence. So that actually helped me to get more into strength training. And I noticed the benefits for myself, and others have said as well, in terms of your mindset.
Yeah.
Feeling more resilient, feeling like you can handle difficult situations and take on stressors in your life better, almost like a buffer. And again, I always tell people, I don't want this to be your only tool in the toolbox, because again, that kind of sometimes can maybe lead people to develop obsession with exercise.
Yeah.
I think it's so valuable in terms of what it can do for us, that it's precious that we need to recognize the benefits, but also recognize that it shouldn't be our only thing.
Yeah.
Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, hope that answers some of your questions.
No, I
Yeah,
think
that's
that's
great.
really interesting. Really, really do. And I guess there's an element of, we had a guest on and I remember her saying when she goes to the gym and she starts to feel like that, she tries to remember everyone paid the exact same amount to be there.
Yeah.
I love that.
So she has
Yeah.
the same right
Yeah.
as everyone else
Yes.
to be
Yes.
there. And I think that's kind of one that I've taken with me a little bit whenever we always,
Yes.
me and my friend joke, it's like the scary area where you've got the big gym lads and it's
Yes,
like, well,
yeah. Yeah.
Actually,
I paid the same amount, so
Yeah.
I'm going to come in
Yeah.
and do what I need
Yeah.
to
I'm
do.
going to lift
Yeah.
just the bar. I'm going to bench press this bar, and you can't say
Yeah.
anything
Absolutely.
with zero
Yeah.
weight.
Yeah, absolutely. You paid just as much to be there, and also thinking we are all here for different reasons.
Yes.
So although I have like kind of, say for example, I'm teaching indoor cycling, obviously everybody is there, so I'm not coaching people individually. So I have a plan of what we're going to do, but I always say work within your own ability. You know, some of you might have done, you know, a half marathon yesterday. Some of you, like myself, might have had 4 days off yesterday. So we're all here for different reasons. Obviously, I want them to have correct technique and work with enough
Yeah.
resistance. But, you know, don't judge anyone else. And, you know, some people are just there to show up for their mental health. So think about that maybe when you go in the gym as well. We are all here for different reasons.
Yeah.
Some people are here to just have a chat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's
Some
me.
people are there to
Yep.
check. Some people are there to look at their
Yeah.
scroll TikTok while they're sitting on a machine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is me.
Yeah.
That is me.
All been there.
I'll just be like on window shopping the whole
Yeah.
time.
I'm usually planning a playlist and getting into the music. But, you know, everybody's there for different reasons. And, you know, thinking about why are you there and what's in it for you. And, you know, also letting go of perfection. I spent a lot of
Yes.
years thinking I needed to do things perfectly. And that actually prevented me from doing things at all. Or, you know, I think a lot of people think this about workouts as well. Like, gosh, if I can't go for an hour, I'm just not going to go.
Yeah.
But I tell people, like, if you're struggling, go for 10 minutes. You'll probably stay for at least 12. And if you do stay for 10 minutes, and if you are physically exhausted and you get there, go home. I'd rather you rest. I even tell people in my group fitness class, I was like, sometimes it's a victory for them to not show up as much as I do want them to be there. But I want people to develop where they are empowered about the choices they make, where they understand the evidence, and where they have a good relationship with exercise, because I want them to be in it for the long term. So I think also taking that long-term approach. Another interesting thing in the research is focusing on the process
Okay.
rather than the outcome. And that kind of is against a lot of that short form social media content, which is like before and after. You do this, you'll look like this. And focusing on the process is like, okay, feeling good, and while you're doing it, I'm doing this for the enjoyment of the training,
Yeah.
not solely the outcome in and of itself.
Yeah. That's so interesting. It really, really is. And I guess to some extent, there's a challenge for a lot of people that have
Yes.
maybe, you know, had that old school
Yes.
way of thinking
Yes.
for a lot longer, that they've almost got to rewire their brain a little
Literally,
bit.
yeah.
Like there's a lot to tackle
Yes.
to get yourself into that positive place.
Yeah, it's not easy. And I try to tell people, you know, the thinking is sort of like, you know, building a muscle in the gym as well, the strength training. You've got to keep practicing it. It
love
doesn't
that.
Yeah.
necessarily come overnight. You're going to get some DOMs. You're going to feel a little sore. You're going to be like, this thinking feels weird. But, you know, we want you to exercise. We want you to stick to these healthy habits long term. But, you know, we want you to have a healthy relationship with it so you can stick with it. And the mindset, it has a big impact on that.
Yeah.
It's interesting you brought up around kind of, I think you said something around the mental toughness that exercise or sport can help you build. And I'm giving a webinar for Hallam staff on Monday about building resilience. And that's what I call my business, because I believe that, you know, when you focus on your life from a holistic perspective and change your mindset, you build that resilience
Yeah.
to do hard things.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think sometimes we want to think about that as the purpose of what we do physical activity for, to really build that strength within ourselves. You know, our body shape changes, and I think as I've gotten older as well, I've realized, you know, it's not as easy to maybe, not that it's about a certain size, but maybe to fit into the jeans that I wore when I was younger, but it's not so much about that. And, you know, your body will change, you'll get wrinkles, and having a mindset that transcends what your body looks like is really important.
Yeah.
And it can
Yeah.
change everything.
Yes.
I really like that. I think it is. It's so tough to balance, and like I guess just pick yourself up
Yes.
when you hear
Yeah.
those negative thoughts coming in. Like
Yeah.
I literally had this the other day where I've got my first wrinkle.
Oh,
FYI, I'm pretty
That
sure.
looks
Like I'm
amazing.
pretty, yeah, just a tiny one. by my cheek, but it's a smiling one. And I was just like,
it's because you lived.
Yeah, and I was
Yeah.
just like, actually,
Love
I was
that.
talking to my mom about how, you know, I've turned 25. I feel like my brain actually works.
Frontal
like,
lobe.
yeah,
there,
I'm actually like,
developed.
whoa, I feel like I'm thinking in 3D.
Yeah.
And like, that's amazing. But like, I think,
Whole new
I don't know,
world. Can't wait for that.
balancing all of that and just seeing something that's perceived so negatively, but going, actually, hang on a minute, because, you know, Saffron without wrinkles, she was naive as hell. Like, she was doing crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I much prefer this version
Yes.
of me,
Yeah.
and this is
Mature.
what accompanies it. This is the sign of knowledge and power and understanding, and that's what I want to be about. And I think
I love that.
it's forcing yourself to rewire it a little bit and catch that little negative and go, whoa, whoa.
That's old Saffron.
Yeah.
No, that's not how we do things around here.
It's like cheese or wine. We get better with age.
Yes.
And the thing is, you know, I like that. It's not how we do things around here. But we're going to be, well, hopefully, you know, luckily we'll have the privilege to be in these bodies for another, you know, hopefully I get another, I don't know, 50 years or so. But why would you want to live, you know, think of it as a house. You don't want to live in a house where you're unhappy and everybody's beating you up all the time. And it's not just flowery language. Maybe people are watching this and thinking, oh, that's nice. It doesn't really matter. But this is rooted in evidence.
Yeah.
You know, not that we necessarily need the evidence to show that once you start thinking this way, you feel better about yourself. I mean, some of the like black and white thinking and challenging that comes from cognitive behavioral therapy, but, you know, it pulls from research in other areas. So another area that I really am interested in is kind of the terminology we use for the words wellness and well-being.
Oh, okay.
There's sort of this industry, which is things like that aren't proven in science. It might be like excessive supplementation or, you know, certain rituals or therapies that aren't really rooted in evidence. And then there's kind of more the evidence-based stuff, which is like sleep, good nutrition, whole foods, psychology. So I think when we hear these terms as well, challenging kind of what we see and what it really means.
Yeah. And I guess, again, it's that how you feel.
Yeah.
Like if someone's told you loads of stuff and you just feel rubbish about yourself, why is that?
Yeah.
Because it's probably not you.
Yeah.
That's the problem here.
I think, again, sometimes we go on social media, we see maybe people that, maybe gymfluencers, or, and we may not realize that that's their full-time job, or maybe they have a lot of support financially for what they're doing. They spend all day in the gym, whereas maybe you're a full-time student and you have a job. You don't have maybe access to the resources or the supplements or the coaching or the lighting or the camera. So I think it's important to also remember, I love Beyonce, but I hate when people say Beyonce has 24 hours in a day and so should you. Because Beyonce probably has a couple dietitians, a couple personal trainers, a lot more money, you know, clothing lines. So, you know, yes, we both have 24 hours in a day, but our 24 hours look differently. So how can you fit in exercise in a way that works for you?
Yes. And it's also like the way you show up to exercise. Like online, you always see this perpetuation of it's aesthetic, makeup done, hair up, matching set, walking into the gym looking like great. And it's like, that is not realistic. Say like you have 3 kids, you have half an hour to squeeze in a workout, you go to the gym, you're not going to be looking like that with the lighting and everything.
Yeah, I remember I did recently a pre- and postnatal exercise qualification, and one of the ladies that works for Move More in Sheffield, she said after she had her first baby, it was such a victory to show up in the gym. She remembers just putting on the pair of leggings, just getting to the gym was like a massive victory. So I think sometimes, yes, we have to remember ourselves, we're all in there for different reasons, but also can we help be the ones to create an environment where other people feel comfortable? And sometimes just a smile, you know, at someone and, you know, just saying, oh, do you need a little more space here? And just making other people feel comfortable as well, you know, to change a culture. We can do what we can.
I love that. So probably just to close up, we'll finish on one more question. And it was just, I guess, going back a little bit to when those negative thoughts creep in. Do you have any specific like top tips or mantras for kind of girls our age to help begin to tackle some of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard, and I think challenging the thoughts that you have in your head, because thoughts come and go, and not everything that, you know, you think is necessarily true. You know, asking yourself, what's really behind this? Is it true? Where is this messaging coming from? Also, you know, thinking about it as, you know, you want to, when your mind kind of drifts from those, to those negative thoughts, thinking about, you know, moving to feel good. Focusing on how good it feels to feel strong and powerful, and thinking about the fact that like it's actually pretty amazing that our bodies can do, you know, what we can do. rather than focusing on it solely for appearance. And thinking about, this stuff is rooted in the evidence.
Yeah.
And I think most people want to use the best science and evidence to inform their training. So thinking of the term in terms of the mindset is just as important as the physical, what you're doing in the gym and what you're putting into your body.
Yeah.
So yeah, I hope that helps.
I think that's really helpful. And I think just the mentality of the brain being a bit of a muscle as well. And you're working that out too. I think that really helps to kind of just solidify it.
And I think sometimes stepping outside of ourselves, because there's a lot of research to show that like helping other people helps us feel better about ourselves.
Yeah.
And if we think, okay, I can be one of the people that's going to help change the culture for future generations so they don't have to feel the way that I ever felt. Because that's kind of one of my motivations. And once I started teaching classes as well, that shifted the motivation away from doing this and more on other people. Not everybody has to be a fitness instructor to do that, but you can think, how can I help change the culture so that other women feel, that exercise is to build ourselves up. And challenge that stuff you see on social media. Also talk to other people. You don't have to keep it in your head.
Yeah.
Even just a friend, like, I feel really crap when I saw this. Do you think this is realistic? And if you hear negative talk about, I gotta, be a lot thinner so I can wear that, or, I'm exercising so that I can have this body transformation, either don't engage or challenge it. Don't be afraid to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so true. Like engaging in that community, which I think is such a massive thing, especially like, I don't know if it's around in the 90s as much, but I feel like especially since starting Like a Girl, we've really noticed like people can band together, and it's that community that I love.
Yeah.
And like run clubs, for example, are huge. Like that entire attitude towards fitness being something to support everyone else.
Yes, I absolutely agree with that. And I guess that's one positive thing, on social media. There's access to so many communities and groups, which the focus is not on body image. I mean, I am biased, but I think group fitness is one great way for that, because we have people from all ages and demographics and generations interacting together. We have a bit of banter, but I also keep it quite evidence-based. And then also a big part of this with the community element is how can we reach people in spaces where people still don't feel comfortable in the gym. So I strangely teach a fitness class in a food hall. We don't have any mirrors, but people show up for themselves and they come back for the community. And I've also taught classes in the Students' Union.
Yes, I was about to ask. I see them all the time. Like they're in the Foundry, aren't they?
Yeah, we did a couple of those. We hope to bring them back. But I got a lot of people again that said, hey, I don't really feel comfortable in the gym. But I keep it the same effective body weight workout that I would do in a gym, but we make it fun. And that goes to actually changing the workout, but you can still change your mindset about the workout. Yeah.
And is it to club music?
Yeah. So obviously I
can't imagine it.
I didn't go to the club nights at University of Sheffield because I wasn't a student here. But that is a whole nother topic around using psychology to help you. But there's so much evidence to show that working in time to the music makes it easier for you. So with Tuesday Club, I love a bit of drum and bass. Working close in time to the music makes it easier. That playlist was easy for me to plan, but I did have to have some education and schooling on what needed to be incled in the Roar playlist.
It's unlike anything else.
So the DJ got back to me and was like, you
music.
need all these songs in here, and I was like, okay. But
I don't know how you managed to put a workout together to those songs, because
wait, you've got to give us an example.
It's
I have no idea what
like
this
Two Door
is.
Cinema Club.
Yeah, that one that's like, oh sit down, oh sit down.
Oh,
there's like random.
Wow.
Well, I need to, because I'm honestly usually quite drunk by the time they come on, and I don't remember what they are now. There's a lot of Taylor Swift.
Oh, I love a bit of that.
Can't think of what else, but how you managed to do that, don't know.
Yeah, I mean, because it was hard finding the higher beats per minute tracks with that one. But again, you also don't have to do what everyone else does. So sometimes I think we look on, fitness follows different trends. Things come and things go. But I feel like running is having a bit of a moment again. And I think sometimes we say, oh my God, I got to be a runner. You don't necessarily have to do running. Find what works for you, what you're going to enjoy. I mean, there's more research to show that you do what you enjoy, you're more likely to stick with it. So, maybe that's for you, group fitness. And again, you're not going to love every element of it. You might not love, hard hill climbs we do, but is there something about it you like? Maybe it's the community, maybe it's the music, maybe it's how you feel afterwards.
Yeah.
Love that. Wow. Yeah, just keep it super personalized and keep it what you enjoy. Yeah, absolutely love it.
Amazing. Okay then, unless there's anything else, is everyone happy?
I'm happy. Yeah.
Yeah, really enjoyed speaking with you both, and you know, conversations like this, you know, across generations, and you know, challenging the narrative that we see are really important and impactful. So thanks for the work that you do.
No,
Thank you for coming on.
Honestly, thank you for coming on, because it's been mind opening.
Mind opening.
There you go. That's a new
Concerning.
phrase for
Don't know
everyone.
about that.
But I think it has made me think a lot about actually how I talk to myself, and hopefully it does for everyone else that's watching, and we can kind of take some of this and really make it into kind of actionable things. 'Cause
Yes.
I think it
Yeah.
has the potential to actually just really make a difference in the lived experience, aside from
Yes.
just the actual physical
Yeah.
fitness, which I just think is so meaningful. So
Yes.
thank you so much.
Thank you so much,
Yes.
ladies.
Thank you for coming on. Yeah.
So that does bring us to the end of this episode. You can take a look in the show notes, and we will link Natalie's business page as well, so you can have a little bit of a look if you want to get involved further. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. As always, make sure to subscribe if you are on YouTube, or follow if you are on Spotify, and feel free to leave us a little bit of a review. How have you found the episode? Are you going to be changing your approach, your mindset? We want to know. Or have you got any positive thoughts that you'd like to share with everyone that help you when you're in the gym or just doing a bit of a workout? We'd love to hear from you all. And yeah, we will see you all very, very soon. Bye.
Bye.